Hey, I'm Russ Abbott. I am the founder of Tattoo Smart. I've also been tattooing for over 25 years. I use digital design tools in my tattoo process every day, and in this case, this video is going to explain a new product that I just created called the Washi Set. Now, the Washi Set is 17 handmade papers from Japan that I photographed and then turned into paper texture backgrounds, which you can use in Procreate. It also includes 21 different brushes that were designed for using with these papers, or it could be used with any background that you choose. Now, the video that you are about to watch is the tutorial that was intended to be included with the purchase of the Washi Set, but later on we decided that we wanted to show this to our YouTube channel subscribers, and therefore I had to record this quick intro. So without further ado, here is the Washi Set tutorial, and I hope you enjoy it. As always, if you're interested in purchasing this or any of our other products, you can get them at tattoosmart.com. Okay, so you've just purchased the Washi Set. This is the instructional video. As promised, I am Russ Abbott, and I'm going to show you inside of this new product, this collection of papers and brushes and color palette that you've just purchased. So thanks for buying it, and I know you're going to love it, so let's dive in and check out what you can do. So here I am in Procreate, and all of my Washi Set papers install here in the Procreate gallery with all of my other Procreate artwork. Now, I've gone ahead and just arranged all of these 17 papers into a stack, and that's what I would recommend that you do. I named my stack Washi Set papers, and they are all in here. Now, before I actually use any of these papers, I always want to remember to duplicate the file so that I will have an original clean copy to work on. So you just swipe on it and tap duplicate, and you get a second copy. Now with that, I'll just pick it up and drag it over here, and I've got a whole other folder here that I use to keep my washi artwork organized in, but you can put it wherever you want. There it is. I'm just going to open it up, and the first thing you'll notice is there are some instructions at the very beginning, reminding you to please duplicate this file before proceeding, just like I just showed you. And a couple of things to note: if you are interested in using the recording feature in Procreate, you just want to make sure that that is turned on. So just tap on the wrench icon and head over to video, and you'll see that time-lapse recording is turned on, and so that should be working. And so I'll just go back to here. Now, open up your layers, and you can go ahead and toggle on and off those instructions after you've had a chance to read them, so just get rid of those. And I've gone ahead and arranged some layers here that if you're already experienced with how you work in Procreate and you don't need any of this, then it's fine. You can just go ahead and delete the whole group. That would look like this. Just swipe and delete, and now the whole group is gone. But we're going to undo that. So this is for those of you that need a little bit of help on how to organize your layers. And so all I've done here is I've just made a layer for your sketch, or as many layers as you need to kind of develop your design. And then next we have 3 different possible modes that you could use for coloring. I'm going to go over that in a few minutes, but each of these layers are set to different layer blending modes. One is multiply, one is darken, and one is normal. So I'll show you what the difference in that is and how your choice for that will affect how colors sit within the paper. Towards the top of the stack, I have a layer for your black or your gray wash shading, a layer for your line work, and then finally a layer for your white highlights. All of these layers have been arranged into a group which can be toggled up and down, turned on and off, all like that. And then finally we have the Pro Mode layers, which are currently locked, and these are the layers that are going to give you that texture, that realistic sort of shine from the light that's in the room that's making your artwork look more like it's real. You can toggle those on and off. You can also unlock them like this, and you can open up. You have the paper sheen layer and you have the paper shadow layer, both of which are adjustable. Just by tapping with 2 fingers, it brings up the opacity, currently set at 15%. You can raise the opacity of the sheen. You see it happening there on the paper. It would be more obvious if there was artwork in there. But you can adjust that. I'll leave it back at 15. And you can adjust the paper shadow as well in the same fashion. So after you're done making the adjustments, swipe, click lock, toggle it closed, turn it off and on, just like that. Okay, so moving to a sketch. I'm going to select a color. Now normally your color palette will look like this, and if you want to access the palette that you downloaded from the set, you would find it in here. I've got it right here. It says the Washi Set. It's a palette of colors that were all taken from Hokusai artwork. So I just got a number of different colors that seem to be consistent in Hokusai's prints, and I felt like this would be a good place for me to start for some authentic washi paintings. So maybe you'll enjoy using it. There is a almost black color there, and an almost black sort of brownish color, and an almost black sort of more bluish tone that I like to use for outlines instead of pure black, so give those a shot. But we'll just go ahead and choose that one. And another thing you can do with these palettes, if you tap on these three dots, hold on, let's say if you go to this one is not currently set as default, so I can set it as default, and then if I go back here, that's the palette that's going to be there. So I want my washi palette set as default, so I'll go back here, tap here, set as default. Now when I return to this color maker or color wheel, I can choose any of these colors and you'll see them changing in this place right here. Okay, so I've got something that's almost black, and let's get into the brush set. Now this is the Washi Set brush set, and we have all of the brushes organized into a few groups. We have the line brushes, which are essentially used for making outlines. We have the shade brushes, which are used for shading or painting. And then we have the effect brushes, which are also used for painting, but are a little different. So finally, we end with the blend brushes, which need to be used over here in smudge mode. We'll get to that. Right, so I would recommend that you do your sketching with this first brush called pencil. And you may see some pre-arranged sizes here that I've gone ahead and built into each brush. And you can tap on them and they will instantly return to that size. And if you ever want to make your own versions of these, it's pretty easy to do it. You just put the brush where you want it and then tap the plus sign, and now you have a new one of those. I'll get rid of that. So you're going to do some sketching, you're going to draw whatever you're going to draw. Just keep in mind that these brushes can also be adjusted for opacity over here. They are going to be limited on how big or how small they can get, and you might not like the choices that I made. So if that happens to you, just remember you can always open up a brush by tapping on it, and you can head down through all of these settings and you can change them. If you look at the included brush description guide that you got, you'll see some tutorials on some various things that you can change. Real quick, you might want to change something like streamline or stabilization here by just moving these up and down. See if you like the way that affects it. And then to change the size, head over to properties, and here under brush behavior you have the maximum size and the minimum size that this brush can be. So if you find that 25% is not big enough for you, you can raise it up. Show you what that does. So let's just take it from 25 to 125. So now our highest setting is going to be super huge when you have this pencil on its side. So now that becomes bigger and everything just kind of changes in scale. It can still get as small as it was, but it's going to get a lot larger. So we'll go back and change that brush back to the way it was. Maximum size back down to 25. You can write 25 right there. Click done. And now that brush should be back to what it was formerly. Great, so let's undo some stuff. So like I said, start with the pencil, do your sketching. When you're happy, switch over to the line work layer. And this is where you can go ahead and choose any of these brushes for line work. The ones that I would probably recommend that you start with first are going to be Slender, because it's just really fun to use. Really, it's light pressure and then heavy pressure. light pressure, heavy pressure. It's got a nice sharp point. This is a really kind of easy, clean brush liner. So try Slender. And then also try Craft. This one's got a lot of expressive quality to it, like paper, or like sort of the edge bleeds into the paper. Can you see what I mean by that? So this might not be so good if you're going to be doing selections using the selection tool over here within your line work, because it can be really hard to select against a line that has that kind of quality. So keep that in mind. But it really does look like ink on paper. Another one to try is Ito or Blade. It's going to be similar to Slender, slightly different qualities. And then this one's kind of strange. It actually opens up and gets kind of empty in the middle of the line. And I was looking at some of the Hokusai woodblock prints, and I noticed that at times some of the lines would have this sort of quality where it looked a little empty on the inside, and I thought I can make a brush that does that. So that is this brush. You might like it for outlines just to get a different quality on an outline for your painting, but you also might like it if you're rendering something like tubes or hoses or wires or something like that. You can see how it looks with a different color selected. So yeah, that one's a little weird, but maybe you'll find a use for it. Let me just go back. Okay. Now, I want you to experiment with all of the shade brushes, and they're all really fun to use, but there's a few that I want to point out. One that I've found the most useful is going to be here. It's called Sumi or Ink. And really large, you can see how you're getting that ink bleed effect that happens with painting onto wet watercolor paper. If you make it smaller, it just kind of looks like a paintbrush, a really tiny liner brush. But so you can use this just for general solid painting, or you can do some really wild big stuff with it. So check that one out. It's really versatile. Really kind of lends itself to giving you a realistic look to your painting. Real quick, we've got this striation brush, which is just beautiful. You've got Fluffy or Fua Fua. Use that for like hair textures maybe. Now, this is one of my favorites. This one's called Kiku, or chrysanthemum in English. This is a very watery brush. With light pressure, you get a really, really light glaze, and with heavy pressure, it adds a lot more paint. So without ever lifting, I can even lighten my pressure and smooth out those edges and take away all of those hard watercolor looking borders that happen, or I can jump back in for heavy pressure. Really, really interesting brush, and you'll get a lot out of this thing. Especially if you combine it with something like Sumi, when you need to really kind of push into a super solid area. Maybe you need to get some detail done, and you can't quite do that with Kiku. But if you lay down the ink with a different brush, then you can come in here and blend it out. So just play with that. Play around a lot with pressure, and just look at what you can do to kind of give it that authentic look. Going through some brushes. So we talked about Kiku. Now Sakura is really similar to Kiku, except it changes colors. So why is it doing that? And it's happening with pressure, right? So with light pressure, at this point I'm getting this darker color, and with heavier pressure I'm getting this yellowish color, much lighter. Well, that's actually here in this area here. You actually have a primary and a secondary color in Procreate. It's just that most brushes don't use that secondary color like this one does. So in order to set the primary and secondary color so you can make this blend in between two colors that you want, first you choose your first color. Let's go with this dark green here, and then tap on the secondary color and choose the secondary color. Okay, so now we have two colors loaded up. And let's test it. So light pressure and heavier pressure. Very nice. Maybe switch back over to chrysanthemum, which will just be the main dark color now. And you can lighten pressure and pull those colors together. You could soften the edge. You can hover for a second. How does that work? touch it with your finger. Okay, yeah, so touching it with your finger after a second and a half will change from the second color to the main color and back and forth. So now I'm on Kiku or Chrysanthemum, and I'm just coloring with that color. And now I've changed colors. Right, so between these two different versions of this very similar brush, you can get a lot. So Sumi Suji or Charcoal Streak is also a color changing brush, but just with a different edge. It's got like a more of a sort of like, you know, noticeable texture and detail in there. Let's see what else. This one. This one is called Sky or Sora in Japanese. And this is the brush that I like to use for the sky. So I can get this beautiful sky effect like something like this. Let's say, just make the brush rather large. It's probably pretty big. Okay. So let's say we want to take it all the way to a light gray, and then maybe into something kind of reddish. Now, this is actually a good chance to show you guys the difference between these three different color modes. Right now I chose a layer that was set to multiply here, color multiply. But if I tap on the M, I can change its mode. So another one that you might want to try is called darken, which is going to look like that. And then finally you have normal, which is going to look like that. So you have three different options there, and they each receive light or extend to the next layer in a different way. And I think I could probably show you a different way to think about these as well. Let's see, what if let's change this to multiply like it was. Now let's go on to this layer that's set to darken. Let's put something underneath it. We'll use this brush. It's called Fude. And let's choose, I don't know, this green here. Alright, so now we have that green and we have these layers on top of it. But what happens if I set this layer to darken? What happens if I set this layer to normal? Okay. Yeah, that doesn't look like something useful at all. So I think most of your new layers, like if you just make a new layer like this, it's going to be set to normal. And so if you're not starting to discover how multiply layer mode and darken layer mode and others are affecting the way that different layers interact with each other, then you're really missing out on a lot here. So let's change this back to multiply. And I will leave you to discover more of that on your own. Let me just clear this out. Let's go back here, and we were looking at the rest of the brushes. So I mentioned Fude. Now I think this one is more of a calligraphy brush. With light pressure, it's just going to give you little striations, and with heavy pressure, it gets pretty big. So use this if you're trying to make like Asian, Japanese style, Chinese style calligraphy sorts of marks. It's really, really beautiful. And you can try different sizes. It's a lot of fun. The next brush I will show you is called Kumo, or Cloud. Now this one, probably go a little bigger with it. This one actually creates more realistic looking clouds, more like the clouds that are actually in the sky. And you can play around with variations of pressure, and every time you start tapping again it gets darker. And you could also switch over to a lighter color and push stuff back on front or on top of that, and maybe even go all the way towards white. Yeah, so if you're looking for a tool to make realistic looking clouds, I think this is a really good way to go. Got a little green there, but you get the idea. This one is called Kasumi or Haze, and it's a little watery, a light pressure, a bleeding edge. It kind of makes an uneven kind of field. Come back in, tap the screen again, and you're going to get even darker. So this is a fun, just watery sort of filler brush that you can use for backgrounds, create something that's not quite so even. That's a fun one. This is kaze or wind. So you guys know the traditional Japanese wind bar backgrounds, right? That's all this brush is really intended to do. And you can just kind of pause for a second, and then it'll do that lock thing, which you can actually edit. So just pause for a second, and you can drop it down, tap this, and now you can move things around a little bit until you're happy. You might try just lowering the opacity and doing one. Edit. And you can change the size, raise the opacity back up. Let's try that again. Oh, got a little messy. Edit. How cool is that? Next, we have Hapa or Leaf. This is another dual color brush. The next two are dual colors. So let's get back to our green and our yellow. And let's see what this baby can do. So with light pressure, it's kind of just alternating at a smaller size. And as I press harder, it gets bigger. And it just sort of jumps back and forth between the colors that I have set up in here. So for example, I could switch to this and this, and now we get more of an autumn leaf. I think this looks like leaves of bushes, you know, far off trees on a mountaintop or something like that. You could just play around with the actual colors that are in there and get something that makes sense for your artwork. Maybe create a whole forest. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. Next, we have Moss, which I think aptly named because it does a pretty good job of replicating that look. Look at that. I want to throw some trees on a mountain in the distance or some moss on a rock up close. It's going to get you there really quickly. Try some different layer modes. There's multiply and there's normal. Let's clear that out. Back to black-ish. Now finally, these are the blend tools, and you need to use these with smudge. So first, before we do any smudging, I just want to lay down a large stroke here. Let's do something like that. And if I want to smudge in and out of that, I need to switch over to smudge tool. So tap on this tool here, and then choose one of these two brushes, either Nami or Nagomi. And they're both just a little bit different shapes. So if you start here in the dark part and you move outward, it's going to smudge outward. Let's make it a little bigger. So you can use this to sort of blend away hard edges, and you can make smoky effects and pull things out. Play around with size, play around with opacity. Make those smooth, wispy, smoky kind of blends. I love to just play with these for hours and hours and hours and make cool things happen. Another cool thing about smudge brushes is they can act as erasers. So if I start out here and I move into it, it's going to cut in and then drag that color around. So hopefully you get the idea with that brush, and Now I want to pull open some finished artwork that I did and demonstrate what the Pro Mode layers are actually doing. So let's go over here and, well, let's open up this dragon. Now this is one that I worked on for quite a few hours. I actually started with a Bill Canales stamp from the Dragon kit, one of our flash sets that we have on Tattoo Smart. So thanks to Bill for being amazing at drawing dragons, because I am not. But I did have a good time using his design and figuring out this background that would work with it and cut through it, and then figuring out how I wanted to color it using my set. So when I open up these layers, you're going to see how crazy it can get for me, where I name each layer based on what it is. So let's just start from the bottom here. We'll turn off the shading, turn off the belly scales, the lips, mouth, and ear, the dorsal spikes, the belly detail, the pink in the claws, the eyes, teeth, and nails, the antlers, the scale color, and then the detail dots on the scale, the heavy outline, and the thin outline. So we'll build this guy back. I think you would start with the heavy outline, maybe then the shading. Let's do the color in the scales. This is what took me the most time. And then just start throwing in all the accessory areas. And each of these areas I put into a different layer because I want to be able to independently change the colors of them later. For example, you've got the pink on the claws. There's that, right? So if I want to, once I've finished coloring everything in, I can duplicate that layer so that I have something to test with. And I'll head up here to this tool, this magic wand, and tap on hue, saturation, and brightness. And now I can just change that color using this slider, and this slider. Let's see what that does. Of course, I already like what I picked before, but I just wanted to show you guys how easy it is to manipulate colors if you're smart about it and you leave your colors in different layers. Let's get rid of that one. Go back to where we were. Okay, so finally, we'll just end with a demonstration of Pro Mode. Now, Pro Mode is currently turned off, so let's toggle it on. And hopefully you can spot the difference, but let me zoom in really close. So this is off, and you'll notice that all the blacks, or the dark, almost blacks that I have in there, just kind of look black. But when you turn Pro Mode on, you can see that it's like there's a light in the room that's sort of reflecting off of the paper. The paper is a little bit reflective, obviously, and then the paper sheen is doing that, right? So if I want more of that, I can unlock that. If I want more paper sheen, tap with 2 fingers. It's currently set at 15%. Slide my finger to the right. That's 40%. You can go a little crazy with paper sheen. Let's take it down to 15% where it was. And then over here is the paper shadow. And that is just kind of burning in that texture a little bit into your artwork. So this is on. It's subtle, but this is off, and this is on. Off, on. Let's make it a little bit more strong. Raise it up. Now it gets a nice, like, browning, sort of aging effect. Everything just looks kind of dingy. That's off, and that's on. So let's just take that back. Somewhere, I think it was about around 20%. Okay, so if you are going to print your artwork, you may or may not want to leave these Pro Mode layers on. I recently did a print of some of my artwork, and we decided to leave just a little bit of each layer on there, and I think it came out really wonderful. But you'll want to work with your printer and make your own decisions about that, because whatever paper you're printing on has its own texture. So this is just going to be adding the photograph of paper texture on, depending on your preference, right? So also, of course, I want to mention there is the paper base layer, which is always on. And so with Pro Mode off and paper base layer off, this is just the way my artwork would normally look on just a white piece of paper. And I guess that really demonstrates the usefulness of having these nice photographs of paper behind everything. Great, so I think that's it for now. I wish you great joy in using this set. I had a lot of fun making it, and I'm going to continue to have a lot of fun using it. And I can't wait to see what you guys are going to make with it. So if you do happen to make something, please share it with us. You can send us an email at support@tattoosmart.com. You can also hashtag #MadeWithTattooSmart anytime you post something on Instagram, and we'll probably see it, or you can send us a DM. Either way, we'd love to see what you're doing, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. So that's it for now. Enjoy the washi set. See you later.